Hello and welcome to a special edition of To The Point with me, Jyoti Malhotra. I'm in conversation today with Husain Haqqani, a Pakistani citizen of many parts, celebrated author, former diplomat, politician. Welcome to India, Ambassador Husain Haqqani.
Pleasure being here, Jyoti.
I'd like to start off by asking you, Mr. Haqqani, about your book, Magnificent Delusions, which has just been published a few weeks ago, in which you talk about Pakistan and describe it in words like deceitful, delusional, paranoid, cheats. Is that the way a Pakistani citizen describes his own country?
First of all, I'm not describing my country, Jyoti, and it's very unfair to say
your own government.
Description of my country or my government. It's a description of elements within Pakistan in their relationship with the United States. And of course, the United States has not been particularly good in terms of its relationship with Pakistan either. So both sides are presented as they have been. It's a book of history.
So both sides are paranoid, delusional, and they betrayed each other and the cheating, and this has gone on since 1947.
Absolutely, but that does happen in foreign policy often. It's not only in relation to Pakistan and the United States. It's important to understand the dysfunction of US-Pakistan relations. The United States and Pakistan have ostensibly been allies since Pakistan's independence, and Pakistanis have never been happy about the outcome of that relationship, nor have the Americans. The Americans feel that they have put in $40 billion into Pakistan in aid, civil and military aid since 1949, and yet they cannot get Pakistan to do what it wants. So the book is about why that has happened.
So why do you think that has happened?
Well, it has happened because Pakistan and the United States deep down did not have a shared national interest as perceived by their respective elites. The Americans wanted to confront the Soviet Union. Pakistan really was not interested in fighting the Soviet Union. Pakistan's concerns related to India at that time, right after partition. And Pakistan had inherited a huge military from British India. 1/3 of British India's army came from Pakistan.
So we'll talk about your accusations or the relationship between Pakistan and India.
It's not an accusation, it's a work of history.
Okay.
There are hundreds of footnotes.
It's a very, very interesting book, and we'll talk about the paranoia or the delusions that Pakistan has for India, for example. But you were telling me about the Pakistan-US relationship, which is a very special one, and which continues till today. All right up to this year in 2014, the Americans, when they withdraw from Afghanistan, Pakistan will play a very important role. So, in your sense, how do you portray, how do you relate geopolitics with what you've written?
First of all, we must understand that the first national interest of every nation has to be the security and the prosperity of its people. So, after inheriting 1/3 of British India's army, Pakistan's leaders made a huge mistake in not determining Pakistan's ability to pay for that army. We ended up with 17% of the revenue sources of British India and 33% of the army. Instead of saying, you know what, we will trim the army to the size of our economy, we decided, or our leaders at that time decided, that they will approach the United States, offer Pakistan's cooperation in American global plans, and in return get support for that army. That has had three consequences. First, it prolonged the India-Pakistan confrontation. Pakistan and India could have found some modus vivendi much earlier if American arms were not being pumped into Pakistan, and subsequently India hadn't approached the Soviet Union, and then it was not pumping its own military at the same time.
But Pakistan wanted that. They wanted those arms from America so as to combat India.
Our leaders wanted those arms, but I don't think that the ordinary peasant in Sindh wanted it. I don't think the ordinary worker in Balochistan did.
Sindh never had a choice.
So really. So that is basically the point, that the delusion was that we will take arms from America and confront India. And the reason why it was a delusion was that even with the American arms, Pakistan was not able to prevail with India in a military sense. So it would have been far more realistic to try and create an understanding with India early on and not continue with the military build-up. So that was the first consequences of the US-Pakistan relationship. The second was a culture of dependence was created. Pakistan's governments failed to implement economic reform. They did not bring the kind of reforms that would have resulted in Pakistan having greater productivity, higher literacy. Right now, school enrollment in Pakistan is at 58%, which is the lowest compared to the other countries in the region, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India. It means 42% of our school going age children don't go to any school.
And then the third point you make is about deception.
The third point is about dependence. Okay. We ended up becoming more and more dependent on the United States, and that created friction between our ostensible ally without necessarily giving us the comfort and the strength that alliance should have brought. Now, deception is an integral part of all politics. People try to deceive each other, but they shouldn't deceive themselves.
Right.
And hence the title of my book is not Magnificent Deception, and it's very unfair characterization that in any way do I suggest that Pakistan deceived anyone. All I'm saying is that Pakistan's leaders who were pursuing this particular policy were delusional that they will be able to attain their objectives with the United States, and the Americans were delusional that they will somehow be able to gain their objectives without necessarily creating problems that they will then later on have to deal with themselves.
So this delusion or this magnificent deception or this magnificent delusion that's gone on from
deception and delusion being two different things.
Two different attributes. Now so through the wars with India, whether it was in 65 or 1971 or even in Kargil in 1999. Now what is it that makes Pakistan feel that it must be in this constant confrontation with India?
Well, if you read my book carefully, and it is more than 400 pages, I know that that's a lot to read for anyone. One of the arguments I make is that Pakistan would be able to attain greater prosperity and strength as a nation if it does not constantly think in terms of military competition with India. Many countries around the world have overcome their difficulties.
What is it that makes the military establishment in Pakistan, which has been in the forefront of Pakistani politics, what is it that makes them believe that they must be?
Jyoti, let me just say one thing. In any country, the strongest institution is the institution that's the best funded and that has the greatest ability to influence the course of events both at home and abroad. In case of Pakistan, as I said, we started off with a situation in which the military was more numerous and therefore got a lion's share of the budget. By the way, India should also be concerned about your own future in this sense, because if you keep on feeding your military, you will come to a point where other institutions may have to give in more to the military, and we are seeing that in America, we saw that in the Soviet Union, it happens in many countries, and in case of Pakistan, that has been a serious problem.
Okay, Husain, we're going to take a very quick break, but we'll come back and I'd like to pursue this line of thought with you. We're going to take a very quick break. You're talking to Husain Haqqani, Pakistani citizen of many parts. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Husain Haqqani, former Pakistani Ambassador to the US and now celebrated author. Ambassador Haqqani, it's been said popularly that Pakistan's 3 A's have really basically characterized its independent existence. We talked about the first A, which was America. You've also written another book on Pakistan's relationship between its religious parties, or from the mosque to the military, or Allah, as you said. And the third A, of course, is the army. Now, if we can talk a little bit about the Pakistani army vis-a-vis India, for example. Today's Pakistan army, do you think that it's moderating itself, or do you think that it's still a much larger than life institution in Pakistan?
Jyoti, first of all, we must understand that citizens of all nations usually admire their army, and they respect their military, because the military is always willing to lay down their lives for the country when the time comes. And I am no different. I also have tremendous respect for the Pakistan army as a defender of Pakistan. At the same time, I feel that what has gone wrong in Pakistan is that the army, instead of being the defender of the country, has ended up becoming the definer of the country. That is a role that I think has not served the army well. It hasn't served Pakistan well. And so what Pakistan needs to do is to have an open debate about what is Pakistan's national interest. Now when you say is the army moderating itself or not, I cannot say that, because the army is not an open institution where you can actually conduct an opinion poll and find out what
you were a victim of the machinations of the Pakistani army 2 years ago.
Let me just
and the whole Lemmergate scandal happened in Pakistan.
Let me just say that several civilians in Pakistan have been the targets of machinations of an overwhelming, overweening intelligence apparatus. Pakistan needs an intelligence apparatus, but that intelligence apparatus should operate under strict accountability to some institutional mechanisms such as civilian control, and the same applies to the army.
But in the wake of May 2011, when Osama bin Laden was discovered in Abbottabad, or discovered within quotes, do you believe that the Pakistani army knew that it was living there?
I don't have any evidence to suggest that the Pakistan army knew that Osama bin Laden was living in Abbottabad. That said, Pakistan does need to tell the world, how did Osama bin Laden live in Pakistan for several years without being discovered?
How do you think? How do you think he was there?
I think he was there primarily because Pakistan's past policy of allowing jihadi groups to operate within our soil has allowed jihadi networks to be totally able to bypass the state, dominate the state, get their way. We've seen that in many cases.
But in collusion with the Pakistani army?
I wouldn't say that it has to be a formal collusion, but let's just say that Pakistan's jihadi apparatus has become a nuisance and a problem for Pakistan.
So
and something like the Abbottabad incident proves that it is now beyond the level where one could say somebody controls the other. We don't know who controls
whom. Somebody would have known in Pakistan, whether in the army or in the civilian government.
Somebody somewhere knew, and we haven't been able to find out who knew and how much. And I think that it would be in Pakistan's interest to have a more open, more transparent analysis and discussion.
Is there already a conversation inside Pakistan, even though you haven't been back recently, about why the Mumbai attacks, for example,
absolutely, and if you read my book, I also talk about the Mumbai attacks. The Mumbai attacks were, and even at that time, you may actually be able to find clips of me speaking as Pakistan's ambassador to the US to the issue that many Pakistanis felt as saddened by the events in Mumbai as the people of Mumbai themselves. The fact of the matter is that Pakistan has had many terrorist attacks as well, comparable terrorist attacks, and terrorism is nobody's friend.
But can you compare these attacks within Pakistan? After all, in India, we believe that what's happening inside Pakistan, very sad as it may be, but this is something that you brought upon yourself.
Well, whoever may have brought upon themselves, or however a tragedy occurs, a tragedy remains a tragedy.
Absolutely, it's a tragedy.
So the focus of our conversation should be, do the people of Pakistan want terrorism to end? And I think they do. And the state apparatus, which remains ambivalent about some of this and does not allow the kind of robust, open debate that I'm talking about. I think Pakistan needs to have a very open discussion. We need to have a debate about many things. Is America our ally? If not, should we be friends with it? If we should be friends with it, what do we have to give to be able to get what we want from them? What kind of relationship we should have with India? What is our future in the economic realm? Why is it that, for example, other countries that are emerging markets in the world, they have 50% of their GDP coming from exports, but in Pakistan only 10% of our GDP comes from exports? Things like that need to be discussed.
Hussain, this is something,
and let me come to Mumbai as well. And in case of events like Mumbai is not just one event, there are many others. I actually think that the parliament attack in 2001, the Srinagar legislature attack just a few days before that parliament attack, then several attacks on Pakistani military establishments inside Pakistan, including the GHQ, all of these are interconnected because the jihadis have their own worldview. The jihadis are not fighting for Pakistan, they are not fighting for India, they are not fighting for Afghanistan, they are fighting for their own worldview, which wants to lock up women, which does not want young Malala Yousafzai to go to school,
but
which does not want us to be part of the 21st century.
I know you're making the connection between the jihadi terrorist nexus inside Pakistan and in India.
And globally.
And globally. But to come back to the Mumbai attacks, which, as you know, has changed India in more ways than even we can understand. Now, what made 10 young Pakistani men get onto that boat from Karachi and sail towards Mumbai?
Look, I will, again, unlike you who wants to talk about an event, I want to talk about a process. I think that it's not just the 10 young men. I want to find out what makes some people.
But do you think there was instigation? Do you think that there was collusion?
I think there is a jihadi,
inside the Pakistani establishment?
Jyoti, there is a jihadi belief system. After all, something made some people go and attack the Twin Towers in New York on 9/11.
Yes, but with Mumbai and with these, I'm sure there is a mindset.
Same mindset.
But if you look at this particular event, would you say that there was knowledge, that there was training?
Obviously there was training.
And that there was collusion with the Pakistani establishment.
No, obviously there's, look, nobody who undertakes a terrorist attack is untrained.
And therefore,
everybody who undertakes. Question is who trains them and how. My point is a bigger point. Here's the difference between what you are trying to say.
Just on the limited point.
No, I can't do the limited point because I have no knowledge of it. Okay. My point is that all major incidents of terror are, in my opinion, interlinked. And whether it's Mumbai,
they cannot be trained by themselves, right?
That's the point I'm making.
They have to be trained.
Exactly. So you and I are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I am
saying that the Pakistani establishment was involved. Can you deny that, or would you agree?
No. It's not for me to deny or anything. I am talking about a bigger point. I am saying that all terrorists receive training, and so must have the Mumbai attackers. My point is that jihadi terrorism per se is wrong. Now you want me to break it down and say terrorist Mr. A is also bad, Mr. Y is no. I'm saying all of them are bad.
They're all a problem. We're going to take a very quick break and we're going to come back. You're watching To The Point, a very special edition of To The Point with Husain Haqqani. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. You're watching a very special edition of To The Point with me, Jyoti Malhotra, and I'm in conversation with Ambassador Husain Haqqani, a Pakistan former diplomat, author, citizen. Now, in a few months, American troops or NATO troops will draw down from Afghanistan. What kind of impact is this going to have on Pakistan? Do you think Pakistan will return to its sort of much stated theory of strategic depth, for example?
Well, a lot of people will play around with words and they'll say it's not strategic depth, we have a new idea, etc. But the bottom line is this. Pakistan has two ways of having a friendly government in Afghanistan. One is to try and impose a government that is friendly to Pakistan in Afghanistan, which Pakistan has tried in the past, or Pakistan can make friends with whoever is the government in Afghanistan.
Do you think the Nawaz Sharif government is willing to do the latter? To make friends with the government in Afghanistan?
My understanding is that the Nawaz Sharif government, like the Zardari government, has said that it wants to do that. But Pakistan's intelligence service has invested very heavily in Afghanistan, and unfortunately they have limited Pakistan's options by not having friendships with the non-Pashtuns, and then among the Pashtuns having friendship and close cooperation only with the hardline fundamentalist groups. So it is not in Pakistan's interest to pursue that policy, but unfortunately the likelihood that that policy would be pursued is greater than that policy being given up for a new outlook on Afghanistan. As far as the American withdrawal is concerned, my concern about American withdrawal is that America's withdrawal might precipitate some kind of a desire on the part of different regional actors to try and influence the course of events in Afghanistan, leading to civil war there, which is not in anybody's interest actually.
But you were making a very interesting point earlier, which is that the Nawaz Sharif government, while it may want to be much more friendly with Kabul, the Pakistani establishment may hold its hand. Do you think that the same applies with India, that Nawaz Sharif wants to make much better friendship with India and his predecessor in the People's Party, in your party, also wanted greater friendship and better relations with India? Look, it's something didn't happen.
It makes economic sense for Pakistan and India to bury the hatchet. It makes political sense for Pakistan and India to move forward. It makes sense in terms of being able to isolate jihadi extremists, but unfortunately it hasn't happened.
And
I
why
mean,
not?
if you think about it, 1999 is the first year that there was talk about when Mr. Vajpayee went to Lahore, and there was this whole talk about, look, let's forget about the fact, let's stop looking at each other as existential or eternal enemies. We need to have, you must have been there at that time also.
And you were very much part of Nawaz Sharif.
No, I wasn't part of Mr. Sharif's government by 1999. That was
much earlier, in the early 90s.
Yes, but in fact during the Kargil crisis I was in prison, courtesy Mr. Sharif's government. But I think Pakistan's politics, of course, takes many turns, and that's par for the course. I think that the real issue is, should we try to resolve the disputes between ourselves first and then normalize, or should we normalize first and then look to more complicated issues to be resolved?
You think we should normalize first?
History tells us that normalization must precede resolving more complex issues. And those in Pakistan who want the resolution of the complex issues first are the ones that hold back Pakistan and hold back every civilian initiative for normalization of relations between India and Pakistan.
So you're talking about Kashmir, but would you also say that if...
Not just Kashmir, other issues as well.
I mean, there's a whole array of issues.
Look, there are issues that are, first of all, there are issues that you have debated, discussed, and you realize that they cannot be resolved right now because both sides have entrenched positions.
So can we put Kashmir on the back burner then?
I think that what we can do is have a more pragmatic approach of building cooperation in areas that we can build upon, rather than economic, trade, tourism,
visas,
open visas, newspaper exchange, for God's sake. I mean, Indian newspapers are not sold in Pakistan, Pakistani newspapers are not available in India. We are actually one of the outliers of regional cooperation. Every other region in the world.
Are the people of Pakistan willing to put issues like Kashmir, Siachen, Creek on the back burner and in favor of greater interaction?
I think the people of Pakistan want economic prosperity. The people of Pakistan want to be part of a globalized world. The people of Pakistan want their country to change, and to change in a way in which their own lives would get better. However, it's important, what are the people of Pakistan being told? Remember that. On international issues, people don't have opinions except those that are formed by what information they are being told. You watch Pakistani television, you probably listen to Pakistani radio, and you probably can guess. Unfortunately, we have a contrived discourse in which we tell our people things that are factually not correct. We tell them that most of our difficulties are because of external factors like India or America. The truth is, India and America may be factors in our lives, but the real problems of Pakistan lie within Pakistan's territory.
So is India still an enemy?
If we don't send half the number of our children to school, it's our problem. It's not because of India.
But Husain,
it's not because of America.
You know, when I go to Pakistan, you find two kinds of people. Some, they say that they want better relations with India. Some who still believe that India is an enemy.
Sure. But I'm sure that there are people in India also who think that, you know, Pakistan will never be a friend, and so we should be we should think of each other as enemies. But let me just say that as a student of global history, I can tell you, no nations in the world have been eternal enemies. Yesterday's enemies have become today's friends and tomorrow's partners. And I think that is the future that Pakistanis and Indians should aspire for. We are two countries and we accept each other. It's about time we got on with the business of making our respective populations happier and more prosperous. Pakistan would benefit from greater trade with India, and so would India.
I cannot let you go, Husain, without asking you about the Devyani Khobragadi affair. You've been a Pakistani diplomat in Washington, D.C. There are several Pakistanis who have domestic help in Washington. Do you pay them the American minimum wage?
I honestly do not know that, because I did not deal with such issues myself personally.
Did you pay your own domestic help minimum?
I did not have that much domestic help anyway, because if you remember, when I was ambassador, my wife was in Pakistan serving as a member of parliament, my children were away at college, so I was a single man and a single man doesn't need that many domestic helpers.
What has been the reaction inside Pakistan
let me just say
to this affair, this spat between India and the US?
Well,
what do Pakistanis say about this?
I think that I was amongst the first people to write about it in an American newspaper, and my point of view was that Americans basically violated the norm of diplomacy, not in technicalities which are irrelevant, the basic norm of diplomatic courtesy. And I gave them the example of the Raymond Davis case, when an American killed 2 civilians in Lahore, and the moment he was arrested, he invoked diplomatic immunity. The only problem was he didn't have diplomatic immunity because he was not on the diplomatic list. The American embassy sent us a letter the next day that he should be put on the diplomatic list. He was exactly in the same situation as Devyani. He was a consular officer. However, what we did do was, we did not strip search him, we did not mistreat him, we made special considerations for him while detaining him, and then, if you remember, he was released after he settled with the families of the victims under Islamic law.
So did India then, in your view and in the view of several Pakistanis, did India do well by withdrawing the privileges of American diplomats here in Delhi? Unequal privileges, I may add. Did India do well by expelling a couple of consular officers from the American embassy?
I think the Americans, for whom I have always had great regard, need to understand that they cannot say that they will invoke the letter of the law for other nations as diplomats in America, but that for them there should be extra privileges which should come as a result of the friendship and diplomatic courtesy. If friendship prevails in Delhi, it should also prevail in New York and Washington, D.C.
Ambassador Husain Haqqani, thank you so much for talking to Rajya Sabha.
Pleasure talking to you.